Thanks for joining us on Not Boring CEs, where we don't think you should be bored to death while getting your continuing ed. Keep listening here, then hop over to notboringces.com to get all your online CE credits. All right, y'all, let's get to learning. Cassandra Lange, LCSW MED, pronounced she, they, is the owner of Queer City Therapy, a private practice in Buffalo, New York that focuses on work with queer, trans, non-monogamous, and kinky clients. Cassandra completed a unique clinical sexology graduate program at Widener University, where she entered determined not to work with couples and exited surprisingly passionate about relationship work. Cassandra has been working as a therapist for nearly a decade and provided DBT in Philadelphia and sex and marriage therapy in North Carolina before returning home to Buffalo to open their practice. So I am here with Cassandra Lange, and we're going to be talking about consensual non-monogamy and how you therapists can really not screw up as much as we might currently be screwing up just because not all of us are well trained. And how you can really help support your clients in a better informed way. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's start with kind of like, where do we begin with clients and relationships in general? Because I think we probably start in the same place, whether our clients are consensually non-monogamous or whether they are monogamous.
Yes.
So kind of walk us through the assessment process.
Yeah. So I work from attachment, like a lot of us do. So I like to explore, as much breadth of their life as I can. So I like to go into what was your childhood like? What were your parents like? But when I'm assessing for relationships, I also ask, what was your parents' relationship like?
Mhm.
Did you see them fight? Did you see them be affectionate with each other ever? Were they affectionate with you? And kind of like pulling out those attachment pieces that show up in our relationships as adults.
Yes.
Of course, you want to know about early relationships, even if they kind of brush off middle school, high school, those things still build a foundation for their adult relationships. And then and their first sexual experiences, their early ones, and then any traumas that they've had, of course. We always want to assess that. But
Mhm.
find out, have they had relational traumas? Have they had sexual traumas? Because that all comes into your work with them as an adult having relationships.
Yeah, 100%. And I think for clients that are similar to my typical client, kind of people pleasing, protective of their parents, often when I ask about their parents' relationship, they're like, oh, they were good. They were, normal level of affection. And like, what's normal? Um, and one of the questions I always ask is, do you want a relationship like the one your parents had?
Mhm.
And that one is like a sparkler. Like it always brings in some good stuff.
Yeah. And we know as therapists, we see this over and over that people tend to have relationships like their parents had, or tend to find partners like one or sometimes both of their parents.
Mhm.
So really important to explore that so that you're able to bring up, like, hey, do you see the sort of patterns that are happening in your relationships?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're getting, our typical basic background of like what have relationships been like for you throughout the history of your life, both the observed relationships and the ones you've participated in. Um, and then how do we get to like just talking about what non-monogamy has looked like for them? Like, do they have examples of it? Are they like, how long have they been thinking about it, pondering it, those kinds of things, or participating? How do
Yeah.
you go about that?
So I approach that often kind of how you approach orientation. Um, there's kind of when we talk about ethical non-monogamy, consensual non-monogamy, there's kind of this idea that there's two kinds, and one is orientation and one is a lifestyle choice. So some people feel wrong in monogamous relationships, just like a queer person might feel wrong in a heterosexual relationship. So
Yeah.
kind of exploring, like, when did you start to feel like maybe monogamy wasn't the right fit for you? Some people maybe have cheated in the past, even though it's really not aligned with their values. Or some people may have realized, 6 months or a year into every relationship, they get restless and they end the relationship. And some people come to non monogamy because their partners were interested in it, or their friends were interested in it and they're trying it that way. And maybe monogamy or non-monogamy fits for them. And that's when it's more of like a lifestyle choice.
Hmm. So is there, and I think that from the outside, there is judgment on one of those and confusion on the other,
Hmm.
right? Within the culture of non-monogamous people, is that reflected?
That's a good question. Um, I think the only time I've seen judgment is when people aren't doing it for reasons that feel ethical or consensual.
Hmm.
So people who are choosing non-monogamy as a lifestyle choice because they're too afraid of losing their partner or because they're exerting control over their partner. People who are choosing it as a lifestyle choice because they're really cheating instead of wanting more like abundant and like consensual relationships. And there's a real clear difference between people who compulsively cheat and want to deceive their partners and people who are non-monogamous and really are just drawn to connecting with people however they connect with people.
Right, right.
So it feels really less about how you come to it in terms of like orientation or lifestyle and more how you behave once you're there.
Hmm. Yeah. So, and I think like depending on where you live, this can be something that is very like more understood or less understood outside of the non-monogamous culture or crew. And so I'm curious to, for our clients, especially in areas where it's not supported, it's judged. I'm skipping ahead, but we're here and I want to know, like, how are you supporting your clients? Um, is it different if it's lifestyle versus just this is my orientation, or is it the same?
I think it does end up looking a little different because when it's orientation, I work with them in the same way I work with my queer and trans clients. So,
Mhm.
regardless of how they approach it, it is going to be like, let's talk about who you want to know about this. Let's talk about how out you are. Let's talk about the dangers of being out potentially at work or on social media. It's not a protected like characteristic about people like
Right,
queer or trans is for now. Um,
right. Depending on when this airs. Mhm.
but non-monogamy is not protected legally pretty much whatsoever. So it can
Mhm.
have ramifications if you have children potentially, you
Mm.
know, for your job. So talking about that, but that is going to have a different impact on people who feel inherently non-monogamous versus someone who it's a lifestyle choice. You know,
Mhm.
people, I bring up swinging because I just think of that as often a lifestyle choice for folks, or previously, you know, a more accessible way to practice non-monogamy. A lot of people they consider it a private thing, something they do in their bedroom or other people's bedrooms, and something they don't need other people to know about. Where
Mhm.
it's like actively polyamorous, like kitchen table polyamorous, where they want all of their partners to come together and be part of their life. It's gonna be a lot harder to be in the closet than if
Mhm.
it's just something they think of as like their sexual behavior that they share with their partner.
Right, right. And I think about how, like you were saying, swinging is like that was an outlet. And I think it was like kind of the more acceptable outlet for decades and decades. Um, yeah. And it is not necessarily the same thing as how a lot of people frame their own consensual non-monogamy.
Right. It's under the ethical non-monogamy umbrella,
Uh-huh.
but it is really just like sexual open relationship, usually not with the emotional connections that a lot of people who want ethical non-monogamy really crave.
Hmm. Yeah. And I kind of want to, because I'm realizing like this conversation right now could be like ethical non-monogamy 101 for some people listening. Like they might not come into this conversation knowing anything. I feel like you've done such a clear job of explaining like the orientation versus the lifestyle. Um, and I think that there's still such a idea of right and wrong around monogamy in our culture that whether like I have a really good friend who is more in the orientation realm.
Hmm.
And it reminds me of like some of my gay friends in the 90s of like, I wish I wasn't like this.
Yeah.
She's had to do a lot of work around accepting herself that this is her and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with her. And then I have a handful of friends who it's a lifestyle. Like it's just like the way that they want to be in relationship and maybe it'll change in the future, maybe it won't. They're like, not committed to that either. Like they're they're not trying to put themselves into a box. They want to be able to enjoy the people that they enjoy in whatever way they want to consensually enjoy one another. Um, and they seem to have a lot less of that angst
Mm, yeah.
because it feels more like a choice for them.
Right.
Um,
Turn it off. If
mhm.
there's, pressure on them to be or appear more monogamous, that's okay with them. That makes sense.
Right, right. And so I'm just like, that's why I ask if there's like a different way in supporting these two different groups, which it sounds like there is, um, because I think that's an important thing to assess so that you're not like trying to work on identity stuff and like the struggle of it with somebody who's like, no, this is fun for me. Like, this is how I want it. So,
Yeah. And I think with clients who come to me and say things like, my partner really wants to open up, I need support in
mhm,
making this happen in a way where I can tolerate it. It is more about boundaries and communication
mhm,
and less an exploration of identity.
right.
But really, there's a big overlap between both groups.
Right. Because you're going to need boundaries and communication with everybody.
Yes.
Everybody all the time in any circumstance, whether you're non-monogamous or not. Yeah. Okay, got it. And so like what I'm hearing is there's individualized treatment plans for people depending on so many different factors, like what you've assessed already around the relationships they've been in, whether this is lifestyle or orientation. And a lot of those individual treatment plans are going to have overlaps
Yeah.
with somebody who might be different, but there's tweaks, and that it's all going to involve communication and boundaries.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
got
Um,
it.
and attachment also comes into play when you're trying to figure out what things to focus on with your client, in terms of exploring how they want the relationships to work and trying to sort of figure out what they might especially struggle with in non-monogamy.
Hmm.
There's an amazing book called Polysecure by Jessica Fry that talks about attachment and non-monogamy. And previously, being non-monogamous, wanting to be non-monogamous, was seen as kind of an attachment failure. It was seen as insecure attachment or like maybe avoidant attachment. You can't commit to people, something that you need to heal in yourself so that you can be successfully monogamous. And
Hmm.
know that that's not the truth of most people's experiences with non-monogamy.
Right.
And again, it comes back to someone who cheats regularly on all of their partners. Maybe that's avoiding intimacy versus
Mhm.
someone who's really inherently drawn to non-monogamy or who is open to practicing it in a more ethical way. And by ethical, I really mean consensual for everyone involved. So
Hmm.
clear boundaries, transparency and communication, everyone knowing that there is non-monogamy happening, that
Right. It's a good basic. Yeah.
it is, and it is not something that everyone has as their baseline.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and that's, there's lots of types of non-monogamy that are not ethical, not consensual.
Yeah.
But Jessica Fern talks about it as a different way for adults to relate because we know that growing up, most of us have multiple parents and we're able to have secure attachments or different attachments with multiple parents. So exploring how adults are able to have that with multiple partners too. And
Hmm.
again, our experience with our caregivers informs how that's going to look. So
Hmm.
if people have avoidant attachment, maybe they don't feel comfortable asking for help or asking for lots of support or care from partners, so they shut down their needs, right?
Hmm.
If it's more like an anxious or preoccupied person, they might act like they're okay with everything, when they're really not, which I gender aside, cool girl syndrome, where
Right, right.
my
Yeah,
clients,
as you were talking about both of those, I'm like, or anybody raised as a girl or woman. Like, yeah.
yes, where it's
Mhm.
just like, I'm trying non-monogamy, I'm dating, maybe other people have more experience than me, so I just need to be okay with whatever they do.
Hmm.
Like unpacking that with clients.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then if clients are maybe disorganized or feel fearful avoidant, maybe they've had some abuse from their parents. So figuring out like what they need to avoid that again. Maybe doing some psychoed on like cycle of abuse or indicators of abuse so that they avoid repeating that with other partners.
Hmm.
And again, it's not
But
dissimilar from what we would do with individual clients,
yeah.
regardless.
And just thinking about how like you said, it's the same if you were doing this with a monogamous client, like it's the non-monogamy is not a symptom of these attachment styles. The attachment styles inform how you work with all your clients.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like I had a really close friend in the God, I guess like 20 years ago, who was a sex therapist. And so
Mhm.
like that's when I first started hearing about ethical non-monogamy outside of like swinging, which I'd heard of swinging.
Yeah.
And for it to be something that's more out and more like not just sex related, that it's like full relationship related as well. Um, but I still had judgment. Like, I mean, it did just my head, I had such a hard time wrapping my head around it because I am oriented and lifestyle wise, just like it's easy for me to be monogamous. Like it's harder. The relationships I stayed in for so long that I should have left. Like I'm like, well, I'm committed, I'm loyal. And so like again, like monogamy isn't always the healthier choice.
Yeah. But it feels like the safer choice. And
Yes.
it's the roadmap that we have.
Yes.
I mean, non-monogamy is so different in 2025 than it
Hmm.
has been ever. I've been non-monogamous since 2012, and that was
Hmm.
a completely different world than it is now. And I think
Right.
non-monogamous folks were really fortunate that it is so widely known and way more accepted.
Hmm.
But I cannot really think of a non-monogamous character from media. We
Hmm.
don't have any depictions of non-monogamy
Right.
around us at all. We're still kind of
Right.
fumbling around trying to figure it out. And
Yeah.
I mean, I would say most people still believe monogamy to be the default or what you'll end up doing.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it is really hard to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I bring that up because I think it's easy for us to sit here and be like, yeah, these other people that have judgment or have biases. But therapists really need to evaluate their own biases deeply. And I'd love for us to talk about that because I was so glad I had this friend of mine who introduced this idea to me so long ago because it was still years before I had a non-monogamous client. And I had like worked through it enough because, like most sex therapists I know, she was like, well, let's talk about your reaction, you know? And so I was able to change the way I was thinking about it. But not everybody has a close sex therapist friend who's gonna like keep their thumb on them to examine things.
Right. And of course, it's pretty inappropriate as a therapist to examine that with your client in the
Oh
moment.
yeah. Yes.
And therapists are not immune to that. I
Mhm.
I advertise my practice as somewhere that clients can come and talk to someone who knows what they're talking about because
Mhm.
so many of them have had therapists in the past who are like, "Oh, what's ethical non-monogamy?" or like constantly learning about it through their client, which of course, not therapeutic, not appropriate.
Right.
So,
Right.
doing this work ourselves, like this training, to kind of
Mhm.
start to figure out like, okay, I'm learning these concepts, I'm thinking about it for myself. Yeah, what does make me uncomfortable about it? Is it multiple loving relationships? Am I pretty okay with swinging? I can understand where you maybe open up your relationship sexually because we know it's really hard to maintain a sexual relationship with a partner over time. So, okay, that
Mhm.
makes sense, but I can't see dating multiple people seriously. Or is it the sexual thing that kind of feels ick to us? Is it like, okay, I can see loving multiple people, but not being sexually monogamous feels uncomfortable or unsafe. And
Mhm.
that, again, is also therapist bias. I think a lot of therapists worry about safety for their clients, but really, it's a bias against people who have multiple sexual partners or
Mhm.
who experience their sexuality differently. And that's something you want to unpack with your client, but also with yourself.
Mhm.
I see sex negativity come into it a lot. I see clients who are exploring non-monogamy saying, okay, but I can't date anyone who has more than X number of sexual partners because it's unsafe. And really reminding ourselves that, well, one, we live in the time of COVID. So
Mhm.
going to the supermarket is unsafe if you look at it
Right.
from a disease perspective. And also, again, 2025, even HIV/AIDS, we have really good treatments. And most STIs, antibiotics and they're gone. It's like a cold.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
really, are we talking about safety or are we talking
Mhm.
about things that we're uncomfortable with?
Right. And where does that sense of like superior morality come from?
Yeah.
Like, what's it rooted in? Because I think, we could be as tricky as anybody else as therapists, and we can convince ourselves that this is about safety when it is about like we were raised in a different way, or, it scares you. Like imagining doing it yourself scares you, and so you assume it's dangerous for them too.
Right. And, true crime has become so popular.
Uh-huh.
We can convince ourselves that it's really unsafe to meet a stranger in public.
Hmm.
But we have to trust our clients to be taking measured risks in everything they do. And that
Yes.
includes dating. And the internet also, we can do a little psycho ed with our clients about here's how you can notice red flags in dating profiles, just like we would with our single monogamous clients.
Hmm.
But that's another way I think that we can kind of mask our discomfort in concerns about safety.
Yeah. And I think too about like the like where you live. Like where I live in Asheville, there's a very large, strong, non-monogamous community. But about, I don't know, maybe about 7 years ago, I had a young client in her early 20s who was like going to these meetups, and everybody was like my age, like they were all in their 40s, and she's like, I'm not really interested in these old men
Yeah.
or these old women. But I feel like these are my options, and like I have to choose between not great options.
Yeah.
And just having to navigate that because I don't want anybody to settle for anything.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, figuring out eventually the community expanded significantly, luckily for
Yes.
that crew. But I
Yeah.
think that also it was meetup.com and maybe just what old people went to. So
Right.
old
Right.
people with quotations.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Old people to a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
And a lot of the more established non-monogamous folks tend to be a little older. They've
Hmm.
maybe been doing this for a while. They're more comfortable with it. Maybe they're just less socially anxious in general, more willing to like put themselves out there and meet people. I know in my experience, sex parties tend to be a little bit of an older crowd,
Hmm.
but apps now, this is mind blowing to me again, as someone who, oh gosh, 13, 14 years ago started practicing non-monogamy. Apps have you list if you're monogamous or not. It's not
Hmm.
a default anymore.
Right.
There's the Field app, which is just for non-monogamy. There's lots of options. And if people can't find community locally, again, like with any orientation, I encourage them to explore the internet, read people's experiences, connect with people online. And a lot of
Hmm.
people find people they want to date online. Long distance relationships are less untenable in non monogamy because they're not your only support system. They're not
Hmm.
your person and your person's long distance. You can have these connections with people in different locations, see them occasionally, and still have really good relationships.
Hmm.
Even if someone does live somewhere rural and maybe there's not a lot of like app activity, they don't need to be limited by that if they're willing to travel or willing to like build a connection online.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I love that, like, there's flexibility. And I think it's really good for us therapists to know about these kinds of resources because if we're working with somebody who's exploring that, but just isn't in the community yet, so they don't know that there
Yeah.
are options. Yeah.
Yes. I also like to kind of warn my clients about things that are pretty common to see when exploring non monogamy for the first time. And
Hmm.
this is something that it's important for therapists to be aware that these things happen in the community. Um, so you may have heard of unicorn hunters.
Hmm.
Um, for anyone who doesn't know, it's generally a cis male, cis female couple. Uh, the male is straight, the woman is bisexual. The idea is that they're going to find a bisexual woman for them both to date so that, there's no jealousy because there's also this concept in non-monogamy called a one penis policy where,
I
OPP,
hadn't heard that.
mhm, where men are okay with their female partners dating other women, but not other men because that feels
Mm,
threatening.
hmm.
So unicorn hunters are looking for this perfect woman who is bisexual and wants to have sex with both of them and maybe date both of them so that they can have this like equal relationship with one person and that there's less chance of like jealousy. It's probably, you know, explaining it already clear what some of the problems are there,
Hmm.
but sometimes that looks like a good opportunity for someone who is maybe a bisexual woman exploring with women for the first time. It feels a little safer, or it
Hmm.
feels safer to have this couple who seems experienced in non-monogamy to like teach them things. But unicorn hunters really, they're looking for an ideal and not a person.
Hmm.
And those kind of restrictions in their relationship means there's probably something going on in their dynamic that they're not willing to address. So they're trying to kind of paper over it.
Hmm.
And the unicorn, bisexual woman who's unattached, unicorns in the community, they tend to get triangulated into that relationship.
Mm.
Um, so that's, I mean, and I would say a lot of the non-monogamy community considers unicorn hunters to be unethical non-monogamy. Um,
What are the like, I mean, how do, like, I'm thinking about that client, I had that young client, like, how, who, yeah, would have looked like a great unicorn. How should clients look out for that? Like, how can we help support new clients or clients new in the community and making sure that they're not getting snatched up by unicorn hunters?
I think just letting them know that this happens
Hmm.
and it's something they'll start to notice once they're aware of it. Um, and just telling them, how it could unfold, but letting them make that choice.
Hmm.
I mean, some people want to be unicorn hunted.
Hmm.
Sometimes it works for people. It's an entry into non-monogamy or it's a relationship that really works for them. We can't make those decisions for our clients, but we can just let them know, like, hey, these are some potential pitfalls. Or if we realize our client starts to date unicorn hunters, just to like explore with them, ask some questions about how the couple is treating them, if they feel like they're being respected as a partner, if they feel like there's couples privilege constantly being hung over them, if they feel like they're not being treated like a full person, if they feel like they're being used for sex. Like we know that this happens, so we can just kind of watch out for it.
Right. And if it's framed as just sex, that's different
Right.
than if it's framed as like this is to be like, yeah. Can you talk more about couples privilege?
Yes. So it's complicated. Um, Couples privilege is the idea that an established couple who's opening their relationship or who's just nested, which is what we call when people live together, maybe married, have a certain amount of privilege just kind of automatically. They might
Hmm.
know each other better. They might have legal protections if they're married. And a lot of times there is this hierarchy where, if you're with your newer partner and your spouse needs something, you're probably going to be pulled towards your spouse. That's the established relationship. You have a certain feeling of obligation there, which
Hmm.
can really make other partners feel less than.
Yeah.
And so this is a bit 201, but in ethical non-monogamy, there's hierarchical polyamory and then there's non-hierarchical polyamory. And hierarchical is I have a primary partner or a nesting partner who's going to come first. And then
Hmm.
there's non-hierarchical, which is everyone is equal, like nobody takes precedence over each other.
Hmm.
That is a really beautiful ideal. And a lot of people see it as the only ethical way to practice polyamory.
Hmm.
In practice, I think it's really unrealistic to ignore the reality that we have longer term or stronger relationships with other people sometimes that are going to come first. That's
Yeah.
just natural. If you live with someone, you're going to be spending more time with them. You're going to be, you know, doing things for each other, where
Hmm.
a partner who you see less frequently, that's not necessarily going to happen. So I
Right.
personally don't think that hierarchy is necessarily bad. It's when there's couples privilege that is overshadowing everything that's going on, that's making other partners feel like they're not important, they're discarded. That's when it really becomes a problem.
Hmm. Got it. And can we talk about some other terms like relationship anarchy, for instance?
Yes. So, relationship anarchy is the idea that all relationships are equally important, and that's platonic, familial, romantic, sexual, all level playing field. So, your spouse is not more important than one of your friends.
Hmm.
And in our culture, that's kind of hard to wrap our brains around because we have this idea that you find your person and you get married and that's your like person who you go to for everything.
Hmm.
And relationship anarchy says, no, my friends are just important. Who cares that I don't have a sexual connection with them? My family's just as important. So relationship anarchy is really like leveling that and saying, I'm not privileging one type of relationship over another.
Right. Right. And then what's the difference between polyamory and open relationships? And like, what are some of the distinctions under the umbrella
Yes.
of consensual non-monogamy?
So I would say most people conceive of open relationships as being open sexually, but not emotionally. I don't think
Mhm.
that's true all the time, but that's how a lot of people think of it. I think it's a more sort of vague term where polyamory is about multiple loves. It's about I'm going to make full connections with other people. It's
Mhm.
not going to be, sometimes it might end up being just sexual, but I'm going to actively be seeking out multiple romantic partners and like fostering those connections because I believe that love is abundant and that we can have more than one romantic sexual partner.
Mhm. Okay, got
So
it.
polyamory has more of like an ethos about it, when open relationship is more just kind of we're not exclusive.
Mhm. So I'm thinking about like unicorn hunters, um, people who are like having sexual relationships with people without telling their partner, even if they've been in open relationships with them historically or things like that. So like what are some of the ways that um people are like non-ethically non-monogamous
Yeah.
and maybe hiding behind being ethically non-monogamous?
Yes. Um, so people who have relationships without telling their partners, there's two main ways that can go, and one is cheating.
Mhm.
People cheat in non-monogamy. It's pretty common. Some people feel like it's too good to be true, so they
Mm,
don't feel like they can actually tell their partner when it happens, even though they have permission, and so they hide it, uh,
mm,
either like putting it off, downplaying things, or just not coming
right.
forward about it at all.
So it's the hiding that's the problem in that circumstance, not the sex.
Right. Yes. Depending on your agreement with your partner.
Right.
Because some people have agreements that you can make out with someone, but not
Hmm.
have sex with them.
Hmm.
And maybe they say they made out with someone, but they went farther than they really did. And that breaks that agreement. So it's really about whatever your agreement is in your relationship. If you're breaking that and not telling your partner, then it's really, I would consider that infidelity.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And then there are some couples, often when they're just starting out with non-monogamy, who practice don't ask, don't tell.
Hmm.
So you can do whatever you want with whoever you want as long as I don't know about it.
Hmm.
And I would say that in the ethical non-monogamy community, there might be a camp that considers that to be ethical because it's agreed upon, it's consensual. And there might be a camp that considers it to be unethical because I don't feel like that ends well. Um,
Hmm.
and maybe with two people who are truly just like carefree and
Hmm.
that's just how they live their life. They don't like knowing things that are maybe a little challenging. Maybe that really does work for them. Who am I to say? But to me, I want to know, why do you not want to know? Are you really actually not okay with it, but you feel like you have to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
and that's where the is it really consensual piece
right.
comes in because
Right.
you're not able to really look at what the choice means.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
It's that kind of gray area consent. I mean, if you think about like having sex when drunk,
Mm-hmm.
it's a gray area consent. Like, would you have consented if you weren't drunk? Would you
Mm-hmm.
consent to your partner being with other people if you knew about it?
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind
Yeah.
of a messy space to be in. And some people have to start that way or feel like they have to start that way to like ease into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really worth exploring why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another unethical way that I often see people practicing polyamory is what's called cowpokes in the community. So cowgirls, cowboys, cowpokes. It's called that because they're basically trying to lasso your partner and bring them in,
Oh. Mm-hmm.
them, their partner. It's not something you can recognize off the bat with people generally. It's just something that becomes evident as your partner starts dating someone new or someone starts dating someone new, that they're really trying to like undermine the existing relationship or relationships and kind of like pull that person into a more like primary or nesting situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's gross behavior. It's really
Yeah.
problematic in the community that it's
Yeah.
usually under the guise of polyamory and non-monogamy, but really just subconsciously or consciously trying to undermine established relationships. Um,
Mm-hmm.
causes a lot of stress and tension because often the person in the new relationship isn't able to see it.
Got it. So it's like the polyamorous version of a home wrecker.
Yes, yes.
Uh-huh. And so, I mean, is that usually like the cowpoke is the person who does that over and over and over, or is it sometimes are they still considered a cowpoke if it's like their connection with this person is so deep and they really like them so much that they like maybe they wanted to be secondary, but now they want to be primary?
That is just a normal progression of feelings. And I
Hmm.
think what makes it a cowpoke versus someone who's just experiencing that is kind of the insidiousness of undermining the
Got it.
previous relationship. I think if there's a lot of transparency and like still respecting established relationships, but when it's trying to chip away at them, maybe like
Mm. Maybe like triangulation or like those kinds of things.
making little nasty comments about the partner or,
Got it.
when it's problematic, when it's really like pitting partners against each other, kind of.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So think about how, like, in every relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, parents and children, communication is just hard. Like,
Yes.
when it's truly honest and real, it has very hard moments. And how the more people we bring into our lives, whether that's romantic or not, the more hard conversations we're signing ourselves up for. Um, and I think that's always been the thing that stuck with me the most about particularly polyamorous people because it's not just the sex. Um, as like that's just it sounds like a lot of work. Um, so how do you help clients come up with boundaries or like feel okay having boundaries? Like, because I can imagine there's some validation that needs to happen sometimes, and the agreements and like just the transparency, all of it.
Yeah. So a thing I work with all my clients, but especially people navigating non-monogamy, this concept of boundaries versus rules. And I think
Hmm.
it's really important, again, in our current age where we have a lot of mental health content on social media that's telling us things that's not exactly accurate, really,
Right.
or
Yeah.
realistic. So boundaries are things we create for ourselves.
Hmm.
A boundary, is I will not have sex without a barrier. A
Hmm.
boundary is, if you don't communicate with me for a week, I will probably pull back emotionally because that's something I really want in a relationship. Those are boundaries. Those are things that we can control in ourselves. Rules are very tempting in non-monogamy, especially starting out, and
Hmm.
are what other people can and can't do. And I really discourage rules,
Hmm.
people. I really try to interrogate what's this rule doing? And especially if the rule is based in fear, then I think that the rule is probably something we need to work on. So
Hmm.
a lot of people try to create this sense of safety, especially if they're opening an existing relationship, by saying, okay, you can go out and do whatever you want with this person. You just can't go to our restaurant, or you just can't have this specific kind of sex, or you just can't have a sleepover. And there is such a difference between like building up your tolerance of your partner doing more like escalated things with a person. Like, maybe I'm not comfortable right now with you going on vacation with someone, but if you want that, we can work towards it, versus you are never allowed to do this specific thing because I feel threatened by it.
Hmm.
And so really unpacking like what is the threat? What is the emotion that you're feeling? And what is the boundary you can create for yourself where your partner still has autonomy? Because this is such an important part of non-monogamy. It's the
Hmm.
autonomy of every person involved to do what feels good and right for them.
Hmm.
And it's our job to respond to that
Yeah.
versus creating these rules, which get broken, of course,
Hmm.
and then creating like conflict that didn't need to be there necessarily, instead of really digging into what does this mean for me? What do I need to feel safe?
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into a really important emotional conversation with non-monogamous folks, which is this idea of jealousy that comes up a lot versus envy. And I like to
Hmm.
really clarify that with clients. Jealousy is when you're afraid something's going to be taken away from you. Envy is when you really want something you don't have.
Hmm. Okay.
Distinguishing between what they're feeling when someone they're dating is with someone else, or they think about someone they're dating with someone else, and then working on it. So
Hmm.
you're not failing at non-monogamy if you feel jealousy. That's such an important thing. Non-monogamous people feel jealousy, they feel envy, they feel insecurity and fear and sadness about their partners going out to see other people sometimes, but it still aligns with their values, so it's worth sitting with.
Hmm.
So with
Oh, that's such an
jealousy,
important distinction. Will you say that again?
which part?
Well, just that like feeling these like because I think about how envy and jealousy feel like they're
Yes.
miserable, but
Yes.
that it's worth sitting with because it's in line with your values.
Yes, absolutely. And so many people say, I could never be non-monogamous. I'm so jealous. And I'm just like, that doesn't matter. It does. It's your willingness to sit with it and work through it, because it's a skill like anything else. There's
Right.
going to be envy and jealousy, but there's also in non-monogamy what's called compersion, which is the feeling of joy seeing your partner with someone else or hearing about your partner be with someone else. And not everyone feels it. Some people feel it really easily, but that's really the goal, is that satisfaction of, someone I love is having a really good time with someone they care about, and it
Hmm.
doesn't threaten me.
Right. And I think like most people have some experience with that of like maybe it's your partner and their brother, or maybe it's your partner and a friend. And it's like, oh, you guys had so fun. Like, I didn't want to go to that show, or I didn't want to throw axes, or I didn't want to, whatever. And I'm so glad you had such a good time with so and so. It sounds like a blast.
And that's
Um,
so important to remember, is that all of us have multiple relationships in our lives.
mhm.
We can really expand how we think about relationships. For a lot of us, it's like, oh, right. When someone has fun with someone else, it's not taking away from their bond with me. So if someone has sex with someone else, or someone experiences romance with someone else, it also doesn't need to take away from their bond with me. With some
Right.
people, it does. If you're oriented monogamous, sometimes you can only feel that with one person. But
Hmm.
for non-monogamous folks, or some people who can choose either way, it really doesn't actually have an impact.
Hmm.
So when you're feeling jealousy, when you're feeling like, if my partner dates someone else, they're going to leave me, you ask for reassurance, just like you would if you were in a monogamous relationship. You say, hey, can you just remind me how much you care about me? Can you just like give me a little time? I know I'm supposed to know this, but my gut doesn't know it right now. My heart doesn't know it. Just remind me how much you care about me. And
Hmm.
just like feed that part of you and ask for support from your partner. And if you're feeling envy, I can't believe that they went to that place. I wanted to go to that place. Go do it. If you feel
Yeah.
envy that your partner is having new relationships and you're not, go date more, go meet more people, go spend time with friends. Like, look for the core of those emotions and then treat that, instead of maybe trying to restrict what your partner is doing.
Hmm. Hmm. Which seems like such a logical knee-jerk thing to try to do because none of
Yes.
us want to feel the feelings and explore the hard feelings. We want to like mitigate ever feeling it again. Um, yeah, yeah. So I see how that would be so easy for people. And I think too, when you're doing something that's not really been modeled for you, I can see how rules would feel like, like ground rules. Like it sounds like it would be helpful, but it also maybe defeats part of what each person is looking for with that autonomy.
Yes. And I've worked with couples, polycules, where they're really struggling because they have these rules and these rules feel really important, but maybe some of the partners or one of the partners is feeling really limited by these rules, and the other person is like, I still feel miserable. Like
Hmm.
these rules are in place because they need to be, because I'm too terrified to not have them, but I'm still not feeling secure. Yes, the rules are fear-based. You're not addressing the actual core of what's going on.
Mm.
You're just creating these rules which can create resentment and like again, rules get broken and then you're angry at your partner and you have fights about it and it doesn't help with your attachment to each other. It doesn't make you feel more secure.
It's so interesting, like this parallel that's happening in my brain right now. I'm thinking about how, like, private practice
Mm.
forces personal development.
Yes.
And it sounds to me like consensual non-monogamy forces personal development.
Yes. Yes. Because you have to learn emotion regulation or you're not going to get through it. You
Yeah.
have to learn self-soothing when your partner or partners are out with someone else.
Hmm.
Have to, I mean, non-monogamous or monogamous, you have to learn those things when you're dating because
Right.
it's hard. You have to learn when you're dating, consistently or often, you have to learn more how to take rejection and how
Hmm.
to soothe yourself with breakups and how to reach out for support when things
Yeah.
are happening. It's all the skills we need as people, but really magnified,
Hmm.
especially because practicing non-monogamy is saying, I'm not going to enter in this monogamous parallel where there is one person who is my support, which I think, cis het men tend to really do that with their female partners of like, this
Hmm.
is the person I talk to when I'm upset. This is the person I talk to about any emotions.
Yeah.
And when that person has other partners they're out with, or you have someone else you're starting to date, you have to learn how to kind of expand that.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm like, it forces personal development if it's done right. And
Yes.
just like a monogamous relationship, like there's all sorts of various levels of shit show that
Yes.
can happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about shit shows that can happen in non-monogamous relationships. And I think often if your orientation is mismatched, that
Hmm.
can be a shit show. If one person is monogamous and one is non-monogamous,
Yeah.
that can be really difficult to manage, which could be a whole other training of like a mixed orientation
Yeah.
relationship. But just like really challenging yourself and really challenging yourself, are these relationships fitting what I want? Because
Hmm.
so much of non-monogamy is about abundance, which
Hmm.
abundance, amazing. And monogamy really tends to privilege longevity of relationships. Like you were talking about, staying in relationships past when maybe you should, because there's security. There's some status to having a relationship. There's, a stigma against being single sometimes in our culture.
Right.
But non-monogamy kind of eschews that and says, is this working for me all the time? Am I picking this person every single day because they're not my default only option?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like stuck in this, well, this is who I'm with because you have other people who are giving you support and love and sex. So you don't have to kind of live in the starvation economy of some marriages that have gone on for a long time.
Ooh, the starvation economy. I like that. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. And I think like we've all worked with those clients who are in marriages or committed relationships where you're like, break up, please just break up. Um, and they don't. But if there was some counter to what they were experiencing, if there was a person that they could spend time with, and I mean, also when they do break up, it's so often because of infidelity, because they met somebody who made them feel alive again.
Right.
And so, yeah, they are kind of choosing to let go because their eyes are open to what's available.
Yes. And I think most of us have probably been through breakups where, as the breakup's happening, we think no one's ever going to love me again. That
Oh,
is,
yeah, every breakup, it's like a rule.
yes, absolutely. And when clients already have people who love them, even if it's what we call a comet partner. So a comet partner is someone who you see when they come around. So
Hmm.
maybe they travel a lot, maybe they live in a different city, maybe you connect every 6 months, every 3 years. But even if you just have a comet partner in another city saying, I would love to see you, like, I think you're sexy, I think you're attractive, that is a reminder that no, we can find more people to love.
Yeah.
And so many
Yeah.
people stay in relationships out of that fear that they're never going
Hmm.
to meet someone again.
Yeah. Oh, that's so, yeah. It's a good point because it's like when we have friends, like if we're monogamous and we have friends, we'd be like, I guess I'm lovable because my friends love me, but it's not the same.
Right?
But
It's not
when
the
you
same.
do have the same and somebody that, like a person or people besides the one you're mourning
Yeah.
that sees all of you, like gets all of you, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And nope, my thought's gone.
Bye-bye, thought.
Okay.
See you later. Yeah.
It came back.
Good.
I have seen also so many times with friends or with clients people who've been in monogamous relationships for a long time and maybe whose parents didn't model the most healthy monogamous relationship, opening up, starting to date someone, and all of a sudden their standards are so much higher
Hmm.
because they realize it's possible. A lot of people, because of their upbringing, because of the relationships they've been in that maybe are mimicking what they saw when they were growing up, don't know that you can actually have a partner who shows up for you, who cares
Hmm.
about you, who doesn't belittle you, who doesn't hurt you. A lot of people really believe that it's not possible.
Hmm.
So even a brief experience of dating someone who treats you well, who does gives you a thoughtful gift, who picks up something for you when they get something for themselves, that really raises the bar for people.
Hmm.
Realizing, oh, this is possible and I deserve more than I'm getting in relationships.
Hmm. And I'm thinking of the converse too, like a good friend of mine who they recently opened up their relationship exclusively like sexually. And it's making her appreciate her connection with her partner better because there's not like resentment of differing sex drives or one person wanting something sexually the other person's not interested in. Like they both have those sexual needs met, sometimes with each other, but also outside. And it just took some of the tension out of their relationship that had been there before.
Yes. Monogamy works for a lot of people. It
Hmm.
can feel like a really safe and secure relationship structure. Having one person to meet all of your sexual needs and many, if not most or all of your emotional needs is a lot of pressure to put on one relationship.
Hmm.
It's a lot of pressure. And, it might be therapist bias that we mostly see couples who have things like libido mismatches, but often people have libido mismatches,
Hmm.
especially transitional times, hormonal transitions, family, like
Hmm.
having kids transitions, work transitions. Having a partner who's starved for touch and sex and having one who cannot imagine it is really stressful.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really worth waiting out. You're both really monogamous, but sometimes it's such a pressure relief to say, go out with your girlfriend, go have fun. I will be here having my time. And then we
Hmm.
can come back together more refreshed, more connected, because we're both getting our needs met in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So it can be supportive if there is a primary relationship. Like it's supportive of that primary relationship, not necessarily taking away from it.
I really believe that non-monogamy and polyamory is additive once you get past those first hurdles.
Hmm.
It just it's really beautiful to see your partner having a connection with someone else. It's really beautiful to go out and have a really exciting date with someone who you're really into and come home and maybe tell your partner all about it.
Hmm.
And again, that new appreciation for your partner. Maybe you go out and have a terrible date and you can both laugh about it. And you can remember, oh, right, my partner's really amazing in these ways that a lot of people aren't.
Hmm.
And I think it really can benefit a relationship as long as you're both being really honest, having those hard conversations, supporting each other's needs, and like continuing to work on that secure attachment with each other.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking too about, when I was younger and this was not talked about so much or it wasn't really explored, like there was swinging and that was kind of it. Um, and like I had so many friends who were in real like half relationships. Like nobody was wanting to be monogamous with one another. I mean, not nobody, but like in the some of the people that I'm thinking of. And how back then it was all like, oh yeah, like he never commits to anybody or she's just like that or whatever. Like it was like there's a model they're not fitting into. And there wasn't support and a name and a community around it back then that would have had them feel like there wasn't something wrong with them or had their friends maybe think that there was something wrong with them. Like I think about like generations of like, oh, they just have commitment issues. Um, of like maybe it's not commitment issues, maybe it's just like there's an abundance and they want all of it when they can. Like who
Right.
doesn't want all of the good stuff? Yeah.
Solo polyamorous. Maybe they don't want to have someone who's their identified partner and they just want to have the connections that they have and like nurture those relationships in a way that feels good for them, but
Mhm.
not have someone on who's on what's called the relationship escalator. Um,
Mhm.
so that's the idea that relationships have this predetermined path where you date, you become exclusive, maybe you move in, maybe you get married, you have kids, you grow old together, and there's obviously other steps on the escalator, going on vacation together, meeting each other's family. But a lot of people don't necessarily want that with anyone they're dating, with everyone they're dating. So being able to step off of that escalator and say, what do I really want in my relationships?
Mhm.
And I've mostly been talking about people who experience romantic and sexual attraction, but non-monogamy also creates so much space for people who might be asexual but still
Mhm.
romantic, who might be aromantic but still be sexual. Like, you
Mhm.
don't have to not date because you're holding someone back if you're partnered with them and you don't want sex with them or you don't want romance with them. There's so much room for people to get their needs met, even if they're not totally aligned. You don't have to, an asexual person doesn't have to date an asexual person
Mhm.
in order for the relationship to work really well.
Yeah, how freeing. Like that just gives so many more options.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
many people don't realize that they're ace because there's not the conversation about it much. And also, a lot of ace people feel like they need to provide sex to their partner because it's a need that their partner has, which is very real. But at the same time, that's so uncomfortable for so many people.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think, I mean, this would be a whole other podcast, but I think about how often asexual people are basically told like there's some trauma or some reason they are like this instead of just like, this is how they're wired. This is who they are.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Right.
And I kind
Yeah.
of mentioned this, but a lot of couples lose sexual attraction over time. Um, oh, I'm losing her name now, but
Esther Perel.
yes, thank you. Of
Yeah.
course. Mating captivity. She talks about how familiarity, like, just naturally reduces sexual attraction, that the erotic is part in the mysterious. So, a lot of couples, when they've known each other for 20, 30, 40 years, they've been together since they were teenagers or like have had very few sexual partners except their partner, that erotic goes away, but it doesn't mean you have to break up because of it. It doesn't mean your marriage is failing because you don't have sex anymore. You can explore that with other people and still have this amazing, like, old love. And I say that in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you have a life together. It doesn't have to end because your sexual connection isn't there.
Hmm. This is super tangential, but I had just finished that book before going on a girls' trip. It had just come out, and I finished it. I was telling my friends about it, and one of them was like, "What was the name of that book? Sex in a Cave?" Mating in Captivity. Close, but I like the image you conjure. Yeah, yeah.
There's so many ways to have relationships, and non-monogamy just gives you permission to explore that.
Hmm. Yeah. So looking at it, I'm just kind of like thinking about the overarching themes of this conversation. Um, that for many people, consensual non-monogamy is additive. It is not about taking away. Um, yes, jealousy and envy are going to happen just like all other feelings happen in our lives. And just like all other feelings, sitting and being with them and exploring them is the way.
Yeah, figuring out their root and how to soothe them without rules, without fear-based action.
Right. That like the feelings are feelings. They're not what we base all our decisions and actions on.
Yes, they're not a threat.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that like this is we need to be non-pathologizing, and for many of us that means working on our biases.
Yes. Yeah. And it's okay to not know everything that your clients are talking about, of course,
Hmm.
but focusing more on what does this mean to you instead of, oh, I've never heard of that. Can you tell me about it?
Hmm.
I feel so bad for clients. Even if we have never heard about it, what does it mean to you? And then go later, do your own research, but they don't need to know you don't know.
Yeah.
And every person's experience is different, so it's worth learning more about their experience with it.
Hmm. I'm thinking too, like there are so many terms you've used, and I love the terms in this,
Mhm.
like a cowpoke and um, like relationship anarchy. Like I feel like they're fun terms. Um, do you know of any resources that can kind of, it's like the 101 for terms that if somebody has a client that's just joined them, so they're not like, well, what's a cowpoke now?
Mhm.
And what do you mean by relationship anarchy? That sounds bad. Um, is there a resource you know of that could be helpful or a website?
I don't know of like a centralized
Hmm.
place that has it. I can find that out. Um, the there's still not that many books out there about non-monogamy.
Hmm.
The kind of core one is still The Ethical Slut, um,
Hmm.
Janet Hardy and Dossie Eaton. And it's pretty outdated. Not everything in there kind of aligns with the community, but it still gives kind of a good foundation of how a lot of people approach polyamory and sort of some of the concepts.
Hmm.
I mean, just a quick Google, if it's someone who's non-monogamous and they have a glossary, it's probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, yeah. So that's probably the way to go. And that way you can get you just like the highlights, like your client's experience is still your client's experience and that's what you're focused on, but then you're not interrupting their story or pretending like you know what they're talking about when they're not, which I mean, I think we all do sometimes in therapy anyway.
Yeah, I know that street in our
Yeah,
town.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, good to get the basics down. I mean, again, I've been non-monogamous for over a decade. I do this work professionally. People will still come to me and say things. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes being honest about that, but not if it's your first non-monogamous person, not if
Right.
you're really showing discomfort with
Hmm.
the topic.
Yeah. And I mean, what is your advice to a therapist who's like, I mean, I'm trying, but I'm still really struggling to feel like it's a legitimate choice for people to make. Like I'm bumping up against this thing from my past or the way I was raised. Would you advise that they refer out? Would you advise that they get consultation? Like, where's the line for that?
I think that if you have a client you have a really good rapport with, an established relationship, and they say, I'm thinking about exploring ethical non-monogamy, go into that journey with them. Be
Hmm.
honest about, I have these feelings about it, but let's talk about it. I think if someone is coming to you fresh, probably refer out,
Hmm.
especially if what they want to work on is mostly relationships.
Yeah.
You want to work on your niche, and they happen to be non-monogamous, I think that that would probably be fine. But if someone's really looking to explore non-monogamy, especially a couple looking to open up and you don't have experience with that, I think referring out is really the best thing to do.
Hmm. Well, and I'll say for having worked in eating disorder work for the last 20 years, I have seen eating disorders resurface for people when they do make the decision to go non-monogamous, simply because it feels like there's so much more, they're going to be judged, is their fear. And they
Mhm.
want to look good and they want to be sexy, and their brains are still stuck in an old version of sexy, right? Like a version of sexy that might not be realistic for them right now. And so for eating disorder therapists, as you're asking questions, to like keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and I think any kind of trauma response or addiction or habit in times of big transition like that, looking out for is that coming up.
Hmm.
And anyone entering non-monogamy for the first time, I think it's really important to explore their dream, right? Like, what's their why? What do they imagine once they've gotten through a lot of the hard stuff? It doesn't end, but once they're familiar with non-monogamy, more experienced in it, what do they want their community to look like? What do they want? Do they want a polycule, which is, you know, their partner and their partner's partners? Do they want like polycule vacations? Do they want maybe to date multiple people who are dating each other, which is very complicated, but maybe that's what they dream of. Maybe they want a spouse and they're both dating other people and they don't really know each other, but they're happy that way. Really like finding that dream and then normalizing that it's not easy to get there. Just like when you're
Hmm.
dating at any point, dating is really, really hard. The apps have become so extra like profit driven and meat
Hmm.
marketing. They don't want you to make a connection because then you're off the app. So like really normalizing it's hard. People are not good to each other necessarily when they're dating. They're going to have a lot of trouble. And I think that's maybe the thing my newly non-monogamous people struggle with the most. Or maybe your partner's having a lot of connections and you aren't. But just
Hmm.
normalizing that it takes time, that these connections are possible, but you're going to have some heartbreak and like have
Hmm.
some bad dates and, figure out what you really want through going through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just really normalizing that you can't just like go out there and a lot of people, like we've talked about, this has not been common for very long, at least publicly. People have been practicing non-monogamy forever, but a lot of people are new to it and a lot of people are bad at it because they're learning.
Yeah.
You're going to date people who are shitty at it, and that it's not a reflection on you or non-monogamy. It's just like building this resilience around dating, which is really stressful regardless of your relationship orientation. But just normalizing that it takes time to build this like ideal situation.
Hmm.
And you may be in and out of it. You may be, your partner may be dating multiple people and you might not have anyone else. And just like the flux of it can be really challenging when they're actually like boots on the ground trying non-monogamy.
Yeah. And I think about some of my like friends in the LGBTQ community and how they're like, I'm not interested in dating somebody who just came out. It's just too much of a roller coaster. And how that is probably reflected of the folks who have been non-monogamous for, a decade. They're probably not like, oh, you decided this week, let's try this.
Yep, that's very much the case in non-monogamy too. A lot of
Yeah.
people, yeah, if you're monogamish or
Hmm.
it's like mostly monogamous, except there's a few exceptions. If you're just opening up with your partner, if you're only sexually open, if you have a lot of rules, we haven't talked about veto power, which is when
Mm.
your primary or nesting partner is able to say, actually, no, you can't date this person,
Oh,
which
wow.
is not, I can say pretty clearly, like not good, but very, very common, very common. And it's really dehumanizing to be in that position.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of experienced non-monogamous people are like, you go have your time, take a year or two, figure it out, deal with your stuff, and then maybe
Hmm.
we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that. And then it's like the people who are being messy with it as they're learning are being messy with it together and hopefully finding some like nuggets of wisdom as they go. Yeah.
And a lot of just like everything, it's just experiencing it and realizing, okay, maybe that boundary isn't working for me,
Hmm.
going through it. And the beautiful thing about non-monogamy is that you can start to have a connection with someone, realize it's not the right time, and then explore it again in a few years when maybe
Hmm.
places, because again, there's not that scarcity of, oh, they're in a relationship now. So that
Hmm.
connection's not possible. Things can really
Yeah.
like bloom over time.
Hmm. Yeah. This was so helpful. I
Oh,
mean, I feel like I knew some things, but I learned a lot, and I hope that like other people listening had the same experience.
yeah.
So, thank you so much for your time, and I do think that this is going to help therapists be more informed and more supportive, and also, it's some personal development for therapists always when we explore our own biases. So, yeah.
Yes. And monogamous and non-monogamous therapists have biases around how non-monogamy should be done too.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Even non-monogamous therapists sitting with your own idea of what ethical means and how people should do it and being willing to really question that for yourself too.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Cassandra.
Thank you.
I hope that broadened your clinical horizons. Head over to notboringces.com to get your CE credit. Want to have a not boring conversation with me about your clinical area of expertise? You can apply there too. If you like this conversation, leave us a 5-star review, tell a friend, and be sure to subscribe for future conversations.